The Agotes were the French name for a persecuted caste that nobody could explain, forced through separate church doors, banned from fountains, marked with a red goosefoot for 5 centuries. Same restrictions, same silence at the end. The link to that video is in the description. But across the Pyrenees, in Navarre, the same people had a different name, Agotes, and unlike the Agotes, they fought back. In the village of Ariscun, in the Basque Valley of Navarre, there is a door. It is set into the side wall of a church. It is smaller than the main entrance, deliberately, measurably smaller. The stonework around it is worn smooth. The arch above it is low enough that an adult entering through it would have to bow their head. This door was not built for storage. It was not a maintenance entrance. It was built for a specific group of people, and only that group, who were legally prohibited from using the main door. Designed so that the act of entering a church required them to stoop, so that their subordination was architectural, built into the stone of the building itself. The door is still there. The church still stands. Nobody who built that door ever wrote down why. These people were called Agotes, and they did something almost no persecuted group in medieval European history did. They went to Rome. They petitioned the Pope. They took their case to court, repeatedly, across 2 centuries. They won. Every single time they won, nothing changed. This is the story of what it looks like to win every argument and lose anyway. In 1514, a delegation of Agotes from Navarre made the journey to Rome. On foot, by mule, through passes that were still frequently impassable in spring. They had a written petition, they had a legal argument, and they had a question nobody had been willing to answer in 4 centuries of documented persecution. On what theological basis is a baptized Christian denied the same holy water as another baptized Christian? The Agotes were not a different religion, not a different race. They spoke Basque, Navarrese, the same languages as their neighbors. They attended Mass, received communion, baptized their children, buried their dead. They were, by every available measure, identical to the people who excluded them. The laws of Navarre had spent generations cataloging what Agotes could not do. They were excluded from everything a citizen was, in writing, in law, in stone. But the laws did not say why. The restrictions were stated as established facts, requiring no justification. That was the argument the Agotes brought to Rome. The restrictions exist. The justification does not. Either produce it or end them. Pope Julius II heard them. He issued a papal bull. It declared the Agote restrictions theologically unjustifiable. It ordered local ecclesiastical authorities to end the discriminatory practices immediately. The Diocese of Pamplona received it, noted it, and did not comply. Read that again. The Pope personally ordered them to stop. They just didn't. No bishop was removed. No priest sanctioned. The most authoritative institution in medieval Christendom had issued a direct instruction, in writing, with the full weight of papal authority behind it, and the communities that enforced the restrictions simply continued enforcing them. The architecture was already built. The reflex was already wired. A document could not move either. If you've ever watched an institution acknowledge injustice, publish a statement, and change nothing, you've seen this mechanism. It is older than you think. But the Agotes didn't stop. What happened next, in a cathedral in Pamplona, was not a petition. It was not a legal argument. It was one man deciding that 2 centuries of correct procedure had produced nothing, and doing something about it with his hands.
History didn't record his name. That is exactly the point. The cathedral records note the act and the prosecution. They do not consider the man worth identifying. He existed in the documentation as a category, an Agote who had committed an offense, rather than as an individual who had made a decision. Here is what he did. He walked through the main entrance of Pamplona's cathedral, not the side door, not the Agote entrance, undersized, positioned to require stooping, a daily architectural instruction to think of yourself as less. The main door. He walked to the principal holy water font and dipped his fingers into it, in full view, without apology. He was arrested and charged as a public order offense, a deliberate provocation requiring criminal prosecution. By the time he did this, the papal bull declaring his treatment unjustifiable had already been issued and already ignored. He knew this. He was, in all likelihood, acting on it. And the court prosecuted him anyway for using the wrong basin of water. The court's position, stated plainly, the Pope may have ruled in your favor. That changes nothing about how we treat you here. History didn't think he was worth recording. That is exactly the point. He was not the last. Across the 17th century, Agote families continued bringing cases through Navarre's courts. Some won. A ruling here, a dispensation there, individual judges willing to apply the law as written. Each local victory produced local resistance. Parishes that lost cases continued the practices anyway. In 1692, a royal decree declared that Agotes possessed full civil rights, equal to any other subject of the Crown of Navarre. In Ariscun, the separate church door remained in use for another 100 years. A carpenter in that village, we'll call him Joannes because that was a common Agote name in the valley, and history didn't save his real one, watched his neighbors file their appeal against the ruling. He had spent his life making the furniture those neighbors sat on. The pews in the church he could not fully enter. The doors of the homes that would not admit him through the front. He was the finest joiner in the valley. The valley accepted his work and appealed his rights simultaneously. The court record of that appeal is preserved in the archive of Pamplona. Joannes is not in it. The neighbors who filed it are. When the fueros of Navarre finally crumbled in the 19th century, nobody made a speech about the Agotes. No proclamation, no ceremony. Their category dissolved inside a larger demolition of feudal law that wasn't about them at all. The Agotes understood what to do with freedom before anyone explained it to them. They didn't announce themselves. They went to the archives first. Parish records were destroyed. Baptism ledgers were burned or altered. The notations that had marked their blood for 5 centuries were removed by the people they had been used to mark. Within 2 generations, The assimilation was complete. Children were not told. The Agote quarters at the village margins were absorbed as towns grew around them. The last person documented by researchers as openly identifying as Agote was recorded in Ariscun in the mid-20th century, in the village where that church door still stands.
The Agotes petitioned the Pope. They walked through the main entrance of the cathedral and accepted the prosecution that followed. They did everything a persecuted people is supposed to do. The institutions heard them, ruled in their favor, and changed nothing until the system was eventually dismantled for unrelated reasons.